Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Tony, and this is Pastors in Cars Getting Donuts. Now, as you can tell, it's a little different this week. We're virtual. We're all still in our cars. We're adhering to good law. We all got donuts, but we have a special guest with us too. So why don't we go around, tell everyone your name and what car you're driving.
Okay, I'll start. I'm Brandon. I am driving a 2015 Audi A4. I don't have a donut, but I have my Grande cold brew with one Splenda.
Hello, I am Morgan. I am driving my tricked out 2007 Volkswagen Jetta, currently sitting at 263,000 miles. Got it for free from my neighbor. And munching on an apple fritter from Henry's Donuts.
Well, nice. Well, guys, I'm Jared Ming. I'm driving a 2019 Lexus ES350, and I had not had time to get a donut yet, so I got my bottle of water.
Wow.
Being healthy.
Well, my name is Tony. As I stated before, I'm in a 2002 Toyota Highlander with 136,000 miles on it, and all-wheel drive. Does great in the snow.
Nice.
Come on.
Now, Pastor Jared and Pastor Brandon, you guys are both leading large churches, and if you're watching this, you attend Venture, you've met Pastor Jared before, you've seen him. He's been at our church dozens of times. But there was a season where the both of you were on staff as associate pastors or an associate role. You guys want to talk about that?
Hey, Brandon,
Well,
we didn't come up. I was going to say, why didn't we come up back then with the idea of pastors and donuts? We should have done that back then. That would have been a lot more fun.
It's because we lived in Modesto. It would have been more like pastors and tacos.
There you go.
Dude, that sounds good too, though. I'd be down for that.
Yeah. Tacos are definitely better in Modesto than they are here, I got to say.
Oh, man.
So I would say, first off, I don't think Jared liked me at first. Like, we're, Jared and I, we're best buds now, but he didn't like me at first.
Actually, I'll tell you the story, everybody, if you want to hear it. So Pastor Berteau basically had to make sure that Brandon went through the gauntlet of all the different pastors, and he had to go and I was one of the ones. There's a couple that he had to go interview with because he wanted our input. And back then, Pastor Brandon had an earring and he had a mullet. And
what? Hold on.
Yeah.
Stop right there. Stop right. He had an earring?
He had an earring and a mullet back then. Yeah. It was when he was a youth pastor. He was trying to be cool, but he was cool for him, for Seattle. And and it's so funny because he came down to my office and we sat and we talked for quite a while, and actually we had a good conversation. But afterwards, Pastor came to me. He's like, "What do you think? Should I hire him?" And I was like, "I don't know, Pastor. I don't know, Pastor Berteau. I'm not sure with the culture here if it's the right fit, because you Seattle guys are a little different." No, so I wasn't sure. So I was kind of like, "I'm not sure, Pastor. We need to think about it." And then he hired him, and Pastor Brandon and I became great friends. And it's a good thing that he didn't listen to me, because they knocked it out of the park with youth ministry. It was incredible.
I was just going to say, how does that make you feel when your pastor asks you your opinion and then he doesn't listen to you?
That's a good point. That's kind of like the way I feel. That's kind of the way I feel with, I've had several people ask me if they should marry a person or not, and I'm over 3 right now.
You got to be honest, though. That was kind of par for the course with Pastor Berteau, though. So it's what you get.
That's awesome.
That's true.
Pastor Jared, why don't you tell me, do you guys have an embarrassing story The two of you on staff doing something ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm terrible.
Wow.
My memory sometimes is bad. Yeah, Pastor Brand has a probably more embarrassing stories of me than I do of him, because Pastor Bertel I was kind of the one that Pastor liked to mock and stuff and make fun of and have a good time with and prank and stuff. So
I
and
can tell you
also
my
I'd get in
favorite
trouble.
Jared story.
Yeah.
You guys want to hear my favorite Jared and Calvary story?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Pastor Berteau, like 90% of the time, was just a blast. Like, he's super funny, and staff meetings were 3 hours of him just talking and being funny. And one time, like, he would have the occasion where he would come in a really bad mood, and this was one of the times that he was in a really bad mood, and you could just tell from the very beginning. And when he's in a bad mood, you just did not mess with him. I don't think Jared was paying attention, and so I don't think Jared noticed that he was in a bad mood. And so Pastor just starts going off, and Jared starts arguing with him, and we have this huge conference table, and I'm thinking this is not going to be good. And he says the greatest verbal undressing of a staff person that I've ever heard in my entire life to Jared. He looks at Jared and he goes, "You shut your mouth, you big baby." And then he says, "You need to get your pacifier out of your mouth." It was so funny that I started laughing in the middle of the meeting. Pastor Berteau looks at me and goes, "What are you laughing at?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, but that was like the funniest thing I've ever heard." Anyways, get your pacifier out of your mouth, you big baby.
That's why we became good friends, was because he had always picked me up and made me feel better. Or he had someone to make him feel better, because I was the one getting in trouble more often than he was.
So Jared, you just didn't pick up on the cue that he was in a bad mood that day.
No, I probably was in a bad mood too. And they say pick your battles, but you got to pick the right battle.
Was there ever?
I picked the wrong one. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, did he ever call you in his office and say, "Hey, man, I'm really sorry. Maybe I lost it on you back there"? Was there ever like a "Go get him, Tiger. Still love you"?
You know what? That was not his personality. He was more of the take you out to lunch at a different time and not mention it, but you knew he was taking you out to lunch, or he was buying you a CD, or it was kind of that approach. It came a different way.
Brandon, I think you've learned a lot and taken a lot from Pastor Glenn Perdue.
I don't remember when I bought you a CD.
That's true. That's true. Just Chewbacca backpacks.
There was oh boy, I don't even know if I should share this one. These people will all remain nameless. How's that?
There you go.
So
I'm nervous. Where are you going with this one?
Jared and I have become really good friends now, and our wives are hanging out. Our kids are all around the same age and stuff like that. And, he has the big worship ministry, and I have the big youth ministry at the church. And to be really blunt, we were heads and tails Pastor Berteau's favorite on staff, just because he really appreciated those two ministries.
Which, by the way, that was true, because he kind of had favorites. They were obvious.
Yeah, totally different than me. So Jared and I didn't get along with our accounting department very well.
Oh my gosh!
And I blame Javette, Jared's wife, worked us into a frenzy over dinner one night. And by the time we left that dinner, I'm pretty sure it was Javette too that kind of convinced us. convinced us to go march into Pastor Berteau's office and order he fire the entire accounting department, or we would quit.
Oh my God.
But
Wow.
let me set the stage here. So it wasn't like it was just we were being mean and vindictive or something like that. There really was some major spiritual things going on that he didn't see, but he wasn't listening to anyone, and he didn't see it. So it was kind of like this spiritual undertone that was really dangerous for the church potentially, and dangerous for the team, and dangerous for the what God was doing. So it really wasn't just hey, we don't like these guys and you need to fire them. It was like we got to somehow shake him up and get him to see that this is really he's being deceived. And so that was the heart behind it. Just making sure you know.
That's important context right there, probably.
Yes, yeah. Just making sure.
And Jared's right. I mean, it was for the betterment of the entire team, spirit, everything.
There was demonic stuff going on there. Demonic controlling, major stuff.
It was a major reason that we couldn't retain staff, and it had a lot to do with the morale of our team, and I would say it was very demonic things there.
Yeah, and there was control. It was really kind of a Jezebel type thing where they were pitting ministries against each other, allowing people to spend money, others not allowing to spend money. And Pastor was traveling a lot at the time, and that department, specifically some people in that department or a person in that department, was really sucking up to him, making him, think everything was great, and so it was like we were talking and like we gotta somehow get him to see this because this is big deal. So anyway, keep going, Brandon. I just had to lay a little foundation there, a little context.
That's very helpful. That paints definitely a better picture of you guys.
Jared he has always been my most spiritual friend. Jared is. So we end up scheduling this very formal lunch with Pastor Berteau, and so Jared and I take him out to lunch at this restaurant in Modesto. I don't remember what it was called. And we basically just shared our hearts and said, hey, we love the church. We love you, but there's some things that we see that need to change immediately. And we basically said at that lunch, and he just listened. He was really super cool. And we basically said, all right, it's either us or them.
Yep.
Do you remember what he did next, Jared?
No, what did he do?
So he kind of paused, and then we kind of braced ourselves because, we respect him. We very reverently feared him also, is the other thing I would say. So
yeah, there's the fear of God and then the fear of Berteau. And it's a little bit below the fear of God, but it was kind of similar.
Right there.
Yeah. I would say that, there was the fear of God, fear of Berteau, and then slightly under that was the fear of our wives. So we were working our way down the fear level.
Yeah.
Wow.
But he honestly paused and looked at us and said, all right, what do you want me to do? And if you know him, that's kind of the way he talks. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do about this? And so Jared and I weren't expecting that.
We're kicking each other under the table, what happened? What do we say now?
It was there's revival busting loose in this restaurant. And to Pastor Berteau's credit, he let every one of them go within the next week.
Wow.
I really feel like you can only pull that card once. And that's if you've made enough deposit somewhere. I've been frustrated with pastors on staff who ask me to come move mattresses for people on Saturdays because they don't want to do it. But that's nothing like a demonic accounting department. So,
yeah, you're right. You can only pull that card once. And you know what? We had never pulled a card like that before. I'd been there for longer than Brandon had. We had never really asked for anything big on the lines of anything like that. We never really got into the politics of stuff because, every church has a little bit of that. We really stayed out of the fray and just did what we were called to do there. And I think Pastor felt like that we were coming with a spiritual perspective and a heart that was trying to look out for him. And I think once we did it, it was like the light bulb went off of all the stuff in his head that had happened and he had heard that he had put away. It was like that discernment kicked in, and he's like, when you see, it's kind of like the little, you take the red pill or the blue pill for, what's that movie?
Well, Matrix action.
Matrix. Yeah, and suddenly everything is different. You see it different. And I think once we said it, everything was different and he saw it. And then to his credit, he actually addressed it quicker and more concise and all of that than I thought he would do. I thought it'd be this drawn out thing. We'd have, issues that would come. He cut the root of that thing right out, and boom, we just moved forward, and it was never a hiccup, and the church got healthier and strong, and that department got strong, and it was cool.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah. The one thing I'll always tell you about Pastor Berteau, he is really good at firing people. Like, I'm terrible at firing people.
Is that a spiritual gift of his?
Oh, he would if somebody was fired, you would come into office the next day and be like, where's so-and-so? And then they were let go, and they were shipped out of the city.
Dang.
They had a new name, and they were witness protection and everything.
Whole new identity.
Witness protection. Well, hey, we're running out of time here, but I just want to say this. It's really cool how you guys in that season, you sowed into hey, we're just going to love our pastor. We're going to crush our departments. We're going to just do what God's called us to do. And here we are 15, 16 years later, and you're reaping what you've sown. You guys both have thriving churches, staffs, and people that love you. And just want to thank you guys for being an encouragement and role models to the younger guys like us. We hope one day that if we lead campuses, churches, whatever that may be, that we would have a bought-out team like that, like you guys. We all need some Jareds and Brandons on our team. So, man, thank you.
It was a good season, and you learn what to do and you learn what not to do. That's part of the growth, and you hopefully take that with you. And then as you move forward, you take the best of what you have, let God help you, and God will bring you the right team and the people when, whether it's your ministry within the church or whether it's you're starting a church or you're leading a church. Sowing the right seeds now is important because it's what you're going to reap later on. And the spirit of how you deal with people above you and parallel or on your same level is going to speak to the kind of people that are going to serve under you in your ministry later on, because you're sowing seeds and those seeds will always come back. So when you sow seeds of honor and you sow seeds of respect for one another and you do things well and you do things right, I've seen a lot of people that they leave wrong or they do things wrong, and then they wonder why they struggle in their new step and their new season, because what you carry out of your last season will carry into your new season. Ooh. And so you got to carry the right things in the season you're in so that you'll carry the right things in the season you're going to, because the next is impacted by the now. And so I think, Pastor Brandon and I were blessed to have some wonderful people. We learned the right things, did things well, left well, honored Pastor Berteau, and God's blessed us with. That's why he's got a great team like you guys. I have a great team, because when you do it right where you are, you'll see God's favor on where you're going.
You know what we call that in Pastors and Cars Getting Donuts? We don't call that a mic drop. We call that a donut drop. Boom!
Nice.
My God.
Money.
Yeah.
Nice.
I would say probably the biggest lesson that I learned from him is he would always sit me down and he would say, Brandon, someday you're going to be sitting in my chair. And he said, you will never understand the amount of weight that it is to sit in this chair. And I would evaluate that all the time. And one of the things that the Lord really spoke to me, and I've taught on this for years, is he would say all the time that God called me to lead this church, that God called me, Glenn Berteau, to lead this church. He called you to serve alongside me. He said, never forget that order, that he didn't call you to this church. He called you to me, called me to lead the church. And from that point on, when I finally grasped that, and it took a lot of humility, because, you know, as a young kind of minister full of dreams and visions, you think it's kind of all about you and your vision and your call, but then you realize it's possible that God called me to serve him. And he is the one that God has called to lead that church. Long after I have moved on and done my own thing, Glenn Berteau will still be leading that church. And I'm really thankful for my season there and the lessons that I learned. He was like working for Yoda. I would say not Yoda. He was like working for like John Gruden the entire time. Like you had a football coach the entire time that knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he was definitely not, he didn't have more of the father vibe. He had more of the coach vibe. And it took it for some people, because I worked under my father before, it took me a while to get that. And I was upset for a while, and I didn't know I was upset, but I was frustrated because I was wanting the fatherly pat you on the back, hug you, you know, tuck you into bed. And he's more of the 6 a.m., get up, we're going to run laps. And what I found is that he drew things out of me that my dad would never draw out of me, that he pushed me to places that my dad would never push me to. I think the other thing that I jump in on what Pastor Brandon was just sharing is that, you know, it's true that until you sit in the seat of being the one called to lead and have to make the decisions, you know, it's tough to understand it, but you really don't understand the weight and the complexity. Because, you know, my kids would come to me and say stuff like, hey, Dad, you know, you need to do this and you need to do that, you know, at home, as an example. But they don't get, I see your perspective, but you don't see mine. I see how Tanner is and how he relates to Hudson, and I see how Hudson, and I know what Haley's strengths are, and I know that Macy's this way, and I know that I got to get all of us over there. And yes, I could do it this way, but you don't realize that I have to understand everybody else, all of the kids, and how to get everybody there, not just what you think is the fastest way to get there. And there's just a perspective that it's one, you can only see it if you're at a higher altitude of leadership. You can't see it when you're standing on a bluff versus on top of a mountain. You just don't have the perspective to see the difference. And that's where it took me a while as a staff member, because I'm a strategic planner, I'm a thinker, and I would come with ideas and I'd be like, hey, we need to do this, we need to do this. And then those things may not be implemented, or he may not accept those or receive those. And it wasn't until I became a lead pastor that I realized I get it now, because I had a limited perspective. I had a perspective that didn't see the whole picture and didn't carry the weight of that decision. And, you know, it took me a while too, like Brandon, to understand I was there to serve him in the vision. It was his job to get the vision. It was my job to execute the vision. And what happens, there's a scripture that says, he who's not faithful to another man's, who will give him his own? And the reality there is that every one of us have our own at some level, our own family, our own calling. It may be one day our own church. It may be whatever. We have our own. But the reality is the scripture says you're not going to get the fullness of your own until you've been faithful to help somebody fulfill their own.
That's
because
good.
God knows that if you can't be faithful and give your best when it's someone else's own, then you won't be faithful with what's your own. Because when you're faithful with someone else's own, there's no buy-in, there's no selfishness in it. There's no, hey, this will help me in the process. And so it's turning that corner to go, you know what? This isn't going to necessarily help me get to where I need to be. This is simply just going to help me serve the position that God's called me to fulfill this kingdom, this own, this calling, this destiny. And when God sees that you can do that well, then he says, now you can do well when it comes to your own. And it took a long time. And people just have to get that. Once they get that, that's often the trigger point to catapult them to faster growth, to more favor, even to quicker destiny. It's the key, because it moves from, it's really becoming what Jesus called us to: deny yourself, pick up your cross and follow me. We struggle in ministry with the deny ourselves, because we tie in the serving with really our heart and our destiny and what we want to accomplish, but we don't see it. We're blind to it. So it really was a great process being there and learning that. And, and God blesses it when you learn it.
Come on.
That's great, Jared. Jared, can you give a special hello to our number one intern, Haley Ming, down there?
Oh yeah, I will.
Miss that girl. She's great.
Yeah, I know she wanted to come today, and she could come with me because she lives with me, so we don't have this social distance. But
Right.
She was in the middle of doing a lot. She's running our student ministries department, and they're busy now, so I had to let her do her thing.
Well, folks, there it is. Pastors in Cars Getting Donuts. Pastor Jared, thank you so much for joining us. All the wisdom and the laughter, man. We really appreciate it. And we're praying that, God would continue to move at Higher Vision. So thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. It's great talking to you guys.
All right. Thanks, Jared. Have a good one, bud.
Yeah, Brandon. Talk to you later, bro.